California lost 1.9 million people in just 7 years. And they didn't just leave, they took their tax dollars with their spending, their demand for your house, and everything else. That demand walking out of the door is the same demand that sets the price on your home. But here's what most sellers completely miss. It's not the people leaving that's going to cost you. It's what the state is doing while they leave and what's happening to your insurance behind the curtain. By the end of this video, you'll see exactly how 3 forces are squeezing your equity at the same time and the 4 forces that move to protect it before everyone else catches on. All right, let's talk about the numbers because this is where it gets real. From 2010 through 2024, almost 10 million people moved out of California to other states, while just over 7 million people moved in from other parts of the country. That's a net outflow of roughly 3 million people in just 14 years. And according to the state's own Department of Finance, California has lost residents to other states every single year since 2001 without exception. So we're not talking about a one-time event or a post-pandemic snapshot. This is a 2-decade bleed. CNN's Fareed Zakaria put the number at 1.9 million residents gone in just 7 years. Now, you can agree or disagree with his politics, but the math is the math. In the most recent year, we have data for roughly 216 more people have left California than arrived. And LA County alone lost over 53,000 residents between July of 2024 and July of 2025. And more than half of California's counties now have fewer people living in them than they did back in 2019. Think about that. Over half of the counties in the state are smaller today than they were just 6 years ago. When people leave, they don't just disappear. They take their tax dollars, their restaurant spending, their retail spending, and their demand for housing with them. That's demand walking right out the door. And in a market where prices are set by the supply and demand more than anything else, you've got to know exactly what happens to your home when the demand side keeps shrinking year after year. But most people miss the bigger picture because they're so focused on people leaving, they don't see the spending happening behind the curtain. It's not just the people leaving, it's what the state is doing while they're leaving. From 2023 to 2026, California population grew by 4.9 million people, but the state budget tripled in the same period, which means state spending per person started at about $530 in 1975 and hit over $8,800 today. Even after you adjust for inflation, that's nearly triple what it was. State employees per 1,000 climbed from 9.6 in 1975 to 12.2 in 2026. So you've got more government workers per person than ever before. Since 2019 alone, general fund spending jumped $100 billion, going from over $146 billion to $248 billion under the current governor's budget. And the Legislative Analyst Office, the state's own nonpartisan fiscal advisor, says California faces structural deficits of $20 to $30 billion every single year. For the 4th year in a row, they're forecasting multiple year shortfalls. That means one thing: the state is spending more than the population can support. And the people who are still here are the ones footing the bill for every single new program and every expanded department. Every cost overrun gets passed down to the taxpayers who stay. That's money out of your pocket, and it's not stopping. And when the state runs a $30 billion hole, they don't just cut spending, they look for revenue. And the property owners are always in that conversation. And that's just the state's balance sheet. But wait until you see what's happening in the homeowners insurance, because the numbers there will make you check your policy twice. Insurers have canceled nearly 400,000 policies in California since 2021. After the Palisades fire in 2025, insurers got hit with an estimated $40 billion in claims. Their response wasn't to stay and adapt, it was to pull back even further from the market. We're talking about State Farm, Liberty Mutual, and other major carriers either raising their rates so high it's unaffordable or pulling out of zip codes entirely. So if you live in a fire risk area or even near one, your options are shrinking fast. And a home without insurance becomes an unmortgageable home. Property values decline. Communities that stood for decades begin to hollow out. Federal data shows disaster declarations linked to climate events have doubled compared to historical averages. Insurance premiums nationwide rose nearly 9% faster than inflation between 2018 and 2022. But California's estimate jump in 2026 is 16%, the largest in the nation. This isn't some theoretical risk. It's already showing up in escrow. If your buyer can't get insurance, they can't get a mortgage, which means your house is worth whatever a cash buyer decides to offer you. And cash buyers don't pay top dollar. They know they have leverage and they're not afraid to use it. Now, you might think it's just retirees heading to Arizona or Nevada for cheaper living, but that's not who's leaving anymore. And the face of the exodus has changed in ways that directly affect your equity. Lower income households have always been more likely to leave because housing costs are brutal in California if you just can't afford it. And over the past 10 years, the state has had a net loss of 532,000 people in lower income adults. That's over 10% of the lower income population. But during the pandemic, higher income departures exploded. The number climbed from less than 150,000 in 2019 to almost 220,000 by 2021. Remote work has made it possible, and about 2/3 of full-time teleworkers in California have at least a bachelor's degree. So the people who can afford to buy your home are some of the ones who now work from their laptop in Texas. California even started losing college graduates. That's almost never happened before. That is half the people who leave the state buy a house in their new state, but only 1/3 of the people who come to California actually buy. That imbalance tells you where the demand is heading. The demand for homes is walking out. The supply for new buyers is shrinking. So let's put this together. You've got a budget that's tripled. Insurance companies running for the exits, and the exact people who buy homes in your price range packing up and moving to Texas or elsewhere. When higher income buyers and college graduates leave, the demand for mid-range and upper mid-range homes shrinks. That's your bread and butter buyer in places like Moore Park, Simi Valley, and Thousand Oaks. The lock-in effect from Prop 13 is already discouraging people from selling because they don't want to lose their tax base when you add uninsurability to the mix. You've got a frozen market that doesn't crash overnight, but it slowly suffocates all your options. It means fewer transactions, longer days on market, and buyers who can still qualify holding all the power. If you're a seller in that environment, you don't set the price, the few remaining buyers do. In Southern California specifically, you've got a double problem. Wildfire risk zones are expanding and the coastal premiums are climbing. Even areas people considered safe 5 years ago are getting hit with higher premiums and non-renewable notices. That doesn't just affect the obvious fire zones, it ripples outward because the insurers look at the whole region, not just the individual streets. So a buyer looking in Ventura might get the same sticker shock as someone looking in the hills. That changes who can afford to close on your home. The state's persistent $20 to $30 billion deficits means the pressure for the new revenue won't stop. The property-related taxes and fees are always a part of the conversation when lawmakers need money. So you're not just watching your buyer pool shrink, you're watching the cost of staying get more and more expensive, including maybe even the cost of selling. All right, so what do you do with that information? Now that you've seen the numbers and you know the pressure on your equity is coming from 3 different directions, you need a game plan. First, know your micro market because Moore Park and Malibu are not the same, and Ventura County is not the wildland urban interface that everybody thinks it is. Insurance risks vary block by block, and so does buyer demand. What's happening in Conejo Valley is not the same as what is happening in San Fernando Valley. Second, review your insurance now, not when you're in escrow, because if your carrier is pulling out, you need time to find the alternatives instead of panicking at the last minute. Call your agent, ask about renewal terms. I've seen deals die in escrow because the buyer's insurance fell through 3 days before closing. That's a deal killer, and it's completely preventable if you do your homework up front. Third, if you're thinking of selling in the next 2 to 3 years, factor in potential smaller buyer pools and longer marketing time. And pricing for the market you remember from 2021 is a recipe for sitting on the market forever. Price for the market you have right now. People who protect their equity are the ones who see the red flags early and adjust before everyone else does. Fourth, if you're buying, understand that you're also buying into the state's fiscal situation, which means your property taxes, assessments, insurance costs, and overall cost of living are all part of the package. You're not just buying a house, you're buying a share of California's budget problem. This isn't about fear, it's about business sense. You don't make money in real estate by ignoring the numbers. You make it by reading them before everyone else catches up. Your equity isn't just about square footage and school districts anymore, because now it's about whether the state can keep its fiscal house in order, whether insurance even want to be here. Think about that. If this helped you think differently about your property, drop your zip code in the comments and tell me what you see with your insurance in your neighborhood. Thank you so much for watching and have yourself a great day.